right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back. And like I always say, a good man is never hard to find, in particular if you're looking in the right places. I just realized that, going into the introduction, my sound was out. And, so I wanted to kind of give you an idea, give you that setup for tonight. Again, I was saying that, if we look at it, that the journey from boyhood to manhood for men of color, in particular Black men of color, seems to be a very tumultuous journey. One of our guests tonight, you'll meet him very shortly. He has a mantra that says, "You do not drown by falling into water. You drown by staying there." And what we're looking at tonight, this idea, it would seem as if you are consumers of popular media today, and in particular, popular media and the gaze that it places on the Black community, it would appear, or communities of color, but Black communities in particular, it would appear that Black men, Black boys are drowning in disproportionate numbers. And so tonight we want to look at this topic of the challenges around raising Black boys or raising boys to men. And tonight I have some special guests. We have some returning guests. Tonight, returning with us, it's none other than Giovanni Culmer, former standout youth athlete turned professional trainer. Good night, Giovanni. Good to have you back with us again.
Good night, everyone.
It's good to see you, sir. Welcome.
Awesome on the side.
Look forward to another engaging conversation with you. Joining us from a previous show as well is Jamaal Archer. Jamaal is a human resource professional, motivational speaker, religious texts. How would I say it, Jamaal?
I'm satisfied with that.
Religious text analyst, biblical analyst. So it's a pleasure to have you back with us as well, Jamaal.
Thank you.
And we also have two special guests joining us new to our panel tonight. The first is an associate head coach and recruiting coordinator at Morehouse College. She's a motivational speaker and also a certified life coach. And joining us is our Christopher Dumas. Brother Dumas.
What's going on, Mr. Humes? How are you?
Nothing much, sir. It's such a pleasure to have you.
Absolutely.
Such a pleasure to have you join us tonight. Oh, sorry. What were you saying?
No, I was like, thank you for having me, man. I appreciate it. Man. Thank you.
It is such a pleasure to have you and the expertise that you'll bring to this discussion. You spend a considerable amount of time at Morehouse as a track coach, working with young men and in recruitment, working with young men that come from these urban areas that somehow are making it through the challenges and becoming upstanding men in the communities, in our communities, young leaders in our communities. So, I'm going to be very interested in hearing your or getting your expertise and experience on this topic. But also joining us, rounding out our panel tonight, is also Brother Troy Clarke, the first. Brother Clarke is a international certified addiction professional. He's the president and CEO of the National Lead Institute. He's a motivational speaker, very much like Brother Dumas, and they're also both certified life coaches. So again, I am so pleased to have you all on the panel tonight. This is a very, very, I guess you would say this is a very engaging topic for most of us. We spend a considerable amount of time examining the issues around Black men in our society and what we eventually produce as a society. And so I'm so pleased to have you guys here tonight to discuss this. I'd also like to, before we begin, also like to say to the audience again, you can participate in the conversation through Facebook. Now Listen Here Studio on Facebook, and Now Listen Here on YouTube. So please join us in the conversation. We take your questions and comments are coming into the live stream, and we'll address some of those tonight. Also, please, I remind you, your likes and support also important to us. So go ahead and like and share our live feed on Facebook, on YouTube as well. I'd like to extend one of my colleagues, one of the panelists tonight, Jabari Hayes. Unfortunately, when he committed, he forgot tonight was his anniversary. And I had to give him my blessings to be with his wife tonight. I couldn't get in the middle of that. So Brother Hayes, happy anniversary. He's a new father as well, so again, congratulations to him on new fatherhood, and happy anniversary to you guys. So now, men, with that out of the way, I'd like to, Brother Clarke, I'd like to pose this first question to you as it relates to the challenges of raising boys to men. The first question says, what seems to be, you spend a considerable amount of time working with men in the inner cities here in New Providence, throughout the Bahamas, and you're now in the US and Canada and the Caribbean. What seems to be some of the most vexing challenges that you experience when it comes to raising boys of color, and particularly Black boys today?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and my fellow panelists. Also, good afternoon, Mr. Humes. Thank you very much for having me. Research have shown us that basically one of the challenges that we have with males and females from infancy even to young adulthood or adolescent is that you have, let's say in both parents in the home, you have little boys are treated totally different than their female counterparts. They're held less often by the parents. They're picked up less frequently. When they are in tears, when they cry for something, got to be strong, stop your crying. And they often experience greater distance and reserve from their fathers than little girls. So as a result of that, you will have these same young boys who, growing up from childhood into adolescent, into adulthood, they take on certain personalities and characteristics. They become aggressive. You got to enforce more rules with them. Generally, the norms than you will find with the female counterpart. Telling the truth. Sometimes they will be what we call truth benders. And then they are, as males, and for me, who are 5 boys, and I have 2 who are under the age of 18 now, one at 11, and the other one at age 15. For me, I guess because I came from a military background, I have enshrined, or they take on a lot of what we call structure and discipline. And because I remember in relationship with their parents, before they always say, hey, you got to remember you're not in boot camp, or you're not in the military with these boys. But some of the challenges, like when I set the foundation, stems back from the way they were reared and bred by their parents. And boys are not taught to communicate as their female counterpart. And so as they grow into adulthood, they take on more or less, they utilize their strength or their inability to use their physical ability, actually. And so as a result, there are a lot of challenges with our young boys raising them. Another challenge is a lot of boys raised in single parent home. Me, for one, I was raised in a single parent home, no father, but some of those would be called risk factors and protective factors that helped me, the protective factors that helped me mitigate against the risk factors that I might have experienced through poverty and other vices like alcohol and drugs were uh, I had other male men. And I like to say male men because, in this climate of GBV, gender-based, and the social construct of gender and so forth, uh, I normally use the terminology male men uh, in that aspect. What happened is that a lot of our young men become feminized. And when I say feminized, not necessarily that they are soft in the sense, but feminized in the way they respond to stimuli or they respond to certain situations in their life. And 9 out of 10 times, females will row for some part. Males on the other end, they wouldn't say much, but they will use their physical ability, and that's where we get a lot of this violence going on. So, raising a young man, or some of the challenges raising a young boy, and especially a black boy, in this environment, is that where we focus on the females for so long and giving equal rights and making sure they are equal, what happens is that our boys are now left behind. They are not reared properly, they're not educated properly, they're not given the skill sets to deal with relationship properly like our female counterpart. And as a result, there are a lot of challenges that fall off. And, I can go on and on about that, but there are some of the vexing challenges that we have facing with our young boys, raising them in this day and age.
Now, you spoke about two things when you speak about male. I think you said male men.
Mm-hmm.
What
I know
exactly?
sound paradoxical, right?
Yeah, but what exactly are you speaking about when you talk about male men? How how would you define that? What does that look like?
Okay, in this world of gender construct, social construct, and what is biological as such, in my context of the usage of the word male man is
Male
a
man.
man that who knows himself, knows who he is, he knows his identity, he knows his heritage, he knows his purpose, he knows his potential, and he knows his destiny. As a male man, I use it in that terminology.
Okay. And I wanted to, you talk about young men becoming feminized, not in the soft way.
Right.
Are you saying that they tend to pick up characteristics
and attributes of our female counterparts? The way a female would respond in certain situations, especially as it relates to conflict. Necessarily, our males will respond in a more aggressive way in conflict, whereas a female might rah rah rah. Males will then, they're not gonna rah rah rah, but they channel it into their aggressive nature, their physical nature, and they lash out, and that's where a lot of our violence come from.
Okay.
And yeah.
Okay. So, Brother Dumas, same question to you. What, in your experience, I'm coming in your experience, what do you find? What seems to be some of the most vexing challenges when it comes to raising boys of color, in particular young black boys?
Well, in my experience, basically, and being in an institution which is all male, we tend to receive those individuals, those young males, whom have gone through whatever particular background they come from, with different challenges. Some with a woman being the foundation of whom they are, not having the male figure in their lives, or even at times coming from a position where you may even have two parents in the household. However, at the same time, the woman is the dominant force in actually raising the male, due to, you know, employment, due to, you know, other dynamics that happens in our society. I could just tell you this from the perspective in which we've dealt with, we deal with young men, and dealing with those challenges is about getting them to understand their responsibilities on whom they are, first and foremost. Okay, and that is something that is an everyday conditioning factor. It's a conditioning factor wherein you take young men and you literally take them through the process and make them understand the expectations of the and responsibilities of men in their position. Now, and I heard the brother say that in, you know, the man, I'm gonna just use it, the man male, right? And using his terminology, the man male is the one who understands that balances of raising a young boy, okay? And and that challenge at this time is because of our society dynamics, all right? It's heavily attacked. Okay, our being is heavily attacked. So we come from what we constantly hear about young black males not being able to express themselves, or so we what we do, we overanalyze them not being able to be able to express themselves. Rather than do that, instead of letting them know there's a certain level of balance that goes along with expressing yourself and being responsible. Okay, being responsible in the position in which you hold as a male. Okay, these dynamics we normally go through an everyday pushing for a condition, again, a conditioning factor, because that's what it is. It's a conditioning factor wherein you have the feminization of young black males, to wherein, you know, we speak about not being able to express yourself, but at the same time, we don't supposed to express ourselves the same way a female express themselves. You have two different energies going on. We have an energy to wherein, you know, we talk about physical attributes of a male. It is going to be more physical. It will be more, you know, it's like athletes, you know, and you know, we look at American football, you know, it's a very violent sport. Okay. It's a sport that it deals with aggression. It deals with a lot of physicalness, and that deals with, to, you know, to be able to perform, correct? So as it pertains to bringing up a young male, those energies just need to be balanced along with being taught how to use that energy in a form which is productive.
So you're
Okay.
saying to me, in some ways, what I'm hearing is that there's a, in many ways there are attempts to negate the biological aspect of who men are or young boys are as they transition to men, and the
Absolutely.
idea that, you know, and you think about it, when you think about it, you look at um, in with these gender issues, when you find that a female is transitioning to male and she's given hormones, she takes on, you know, more, you know, they become more aggressive. You look at athletes who,
Mhm.
female athletes who took steroids, you know, hormone, um, steroids and the likes, they took on these more male characteristics. They became a lot more aggressive. So you're saying then that most people tend to um, negate the hormonal aspect of who we are, the biological aspect of who we are, or they try to deny that, or deny men that aspect to get them to be more or less aggressive.
Well, I'll say less aggressive in a responsible manner. Okay. There's a certain level of aggression that a male should need to have as it pertains to having the fortitude to go look for a job or employment. It's a more it's a certain level of aggression and understanding, not in the sense of physical aggression, but also it comes into wherein how it's a battleground for us as men, as a male, as being a male, we have a certain level of energy that we take in or and take forth in everything that we try to accomplish.
Well, how much of that has to do, and it's Troy, and then coming, how much of that has to do with testosterone?
Uh, can I chime in here? Here's
Sure.
the thing. Here's the thing. Some of it might have to do. Some of it deals with testosterone, but a lot of this is environmental. Because the way we raise our boys to be men, we want them to be like us. We want them to be bigger. We want them to be stronger. We want them to be better, faster, braver, tougher, even more cockier. And what society has done, see, like the African proverb says, it takes a village to raise a man. Here's the thing. If the village itself is dysfunctional,
Yeah.
we're gonna have dysfunctional men. And what is happening is that we're now raising a lot of dysfunctional men because uh, society.
We're in a dysfunctional we're in a dysfunctional society to where
Yes,
we don't have these balances of the household to where these two genders work together into producing this male, producing
Okay.
this male or any other or a woman child, a young lady, a girl child. So those balances are not created to wherein there's, I constantly hear, and I could just tell you, and at Morehouse, and we constantly hear about, this being able to express yourself, being able to talk and have a conversation. Now, again, it's different than what a young female child would have. The expression shouldn't be the example of a female child.
right,
The expression should be how healthy, from a healthy male perspective, how this aggression or this expression should be dispersed or used. And I think one of the things is being in an environment to where it's mostly men dealing with these supposed societal challenges on how we are looked at, and understanding that it's very important to first of all acknowledge that there is a difference between girls and boys.
That's yeah.
That's the first primary understanding we must go in raising our young men. You can't go in at the same time and say I'm going to plant an orange and feed it like you feed an apple. You cannot do it. You cannot do it. It's fruit. It's fruit. Both of them are fruits, but however, they need different types of nourishment. As it pertains to same applies to young black males. So our challenges actually come from really not attacking or actually talking more about the different balances and in which the balance in which we need to use this type of upbringing for young black males. So because we're in a society wherein again it is over feminizing, and it is trying to, especially when it comes down to black males, because black males, you know we are looked upon as being this aggressive, almost animalistic type of being that
Right.
has no control, and it's such a farce. It's such a farce dialogue. It's a This is such a farce dialogue. It's false, and and I think the dialogue, we need to switch the dialogue, and again going back to understanding the different energies, and truly come to terms with, they're not supposed to be the same, but at the
Right.
same time there are plenty of us who have a construct, understanding to wherein we know that there's a male energy, how it's supposed to be used, how it's supposed to be placed, and how it's supposed to be appreciated in a society that has a whole hell of a lot of black men. Okay, so our dynamics in which we're trying to go about it is really the difficult part of it, and it's a conditioning factor in which every aspect of what our being is goes along with. So we need to really find a way, amongst all these gentlemen that I know that have great understanding and aspects of doing this, that we come together and not allow this to be dictated on how we're supposed to do it, but understand that there is a healthy way, and it is different. and it should not be looked upon or even compared to a girl being a young lady or a girl being brought up in our society today, because it is different, and we need to
Okay.
respect the differences.
And we're going to dive deep. I want to dive deep into some of the things that you're saying about, about the male energy and this attempt to sort of subvert male energy because of whatever it represents, whatever the perception is. So I'll come back to that. But I want to throw the question to Brother Culmer. As far as you're concerned, what are some of the most vexing challenges that you see as it relates to raising young Black men or men of color to boys of color to men of color?
Good evening again, everyone. There are quite a few issues that I've noticed, and also research has proven that exists as it comes to raising young Black men. The first one I want to start with, it was already mentioned by Mr. Clarke and Mr. Christopher, was that you have a lot of young Black men being raised in homes where there isn't a solid male figure in that environment, right? So there's not someone who they can look up to and idolize and almost emulate to a degree to have an idea of what a male should represent, especially being in response to being around females and other members of society. So these men are being raised without any form of direction in which to stare or lean towards and say, okay, I want to be like this gentleman. And what I've also noticed along with that, to tag along with that, is that the man that happen to have the eyes of the young boys are not always the most positive, influential people in society. And this happens, I've noticed, primarily because those men that are the perfect examples of what young boys should probably emulate or look up to, in many cases, they go on to soar to higher heights. But we don't see these successful men that are excellent examples turn back to help and pull up those younger men in our society. You have men that are being raised in environments where there aren't male figures, or maybe there aren't male figures that are positive enough for them to emulate. So they adopt whatever it is in their environment. Now, some of us, we are fortunate enough to have those male figures that are great examples. And so we have an example to look up to. We're raised in strict environments where we are taught how to be emotional, how to garner our emotions as a man, because there is a difference between men expressing their emotions and female expressing their emotions. Like Mr. Christopher mentioned, we both express emotions, but we express them in different ways. Men tend to lean more towards the physical aspect, or being more aggressive as as a response to how we want to portray the way we feel in certain instances. But in that being the case, some men aren't taught where the line is drawn, how far to go. What is acceptable or applicable based off a certain scenario. You know, and and kind of a guideline on where you should carry certain emotions that you have, or this is an understandable feeling that you have right now, and this how I would recommend you deal with this as a young boy. We have environments now where the culture is almost, it looks down on a traditional masculine figure, the one that we grew
Anti-male.
up exactly, and they call it, like, I think the term is toxic masculinity.
Toxic, right?
Yeah.
Toxic masculinity, yes.
Yeah,
So
and yeah,
what I would have
that's
grown up to know as a representation of what a male should be from my father and uncles and grandfather, as what I see a man to be, not only in society but in those around him. Now today, these things are frowned upon, and it appears as almost what I knew to be the way to raise a man to be successful, not only for himself but those who he has to take on this wing that are his responsibility, his kids, his family. There's no place for him because he's not being respected in society. And this can be a deterrent and depression for a lot of men because there's nowhere for you to lean to. There's nowhere for you to lean to for encouragement to say, hey, you are on the right path, you are doing the right thing. So for those men who aren't strong enough to stand on their own 2 feet, they find themselves reverting to what everyone else deems applicable or acceptable in society. And what tends to happen is you're favored for being a weaker representation of what a male should be. And what you truly should be is being dampened because you don't want to be the person that no one likes.
But
No
who?
one no one enjoys to be around, because a male is traditionally supposed to be a pace setter and a representation of what rules and law is supposed to be in any environment.
No, you're
Right?
saying that whatever representation of maleness is out there is favored.
Mhm.
Again, repeat that it's favored for what reason?
The representation of what a traditional male is supposed to be isn't favored as it used to be.
Isn't as favored as it used to be.
It's not as favored as it used to be. A more
And
feminized representation of a male,
favored by whom in
favored
particular?
by society as a whole.
Yeah,
And
because if we look at our societies, and I have a chance to work in several different communities throughout our Caribbean nations, and I've seen many of these things in common, and what we call a a real man, especially black males. You don't answer to anyone. You don't cry. You're a hard lover. You don't talk long. Takes risks. Make bones. Bears pain. No sickness. Doesn't see a doctor. You can hold your liquor. Things like that. Hang out with the boys. Touches up his wife or his girlfriend if she get out of line, or you have a side thing or two. And that's what the dysfunctional society has actually taught us what a real man is. And we could go back to slave time to now how the predominant colonial or slave masters have taken slavery, and that culture is now predominant in our community. We have not really been taught what it is to be real a real man, like I like to say, a male man or a real man who's responsible, family focused, provider, protector, leadership, and committed.
Well, those
You know,
conditions, well, I would say that there lies where there are conditioning factors,
yeah,
well,
wherein
before we get to that, because that is one of the questions, because I'm sort of listening to all of the responses. Before we dive into those, we get deep into this discussion. I want to hear a little bit more from Jamaal, and Tevin is in the wings. Since we have this break, let me bring Tevin into the conversation. Tevin is a returning guest as well. Welcome, Tevin.
Thank you guys.
So thank you for joining the conversation. That's one of the questions that I have as well. This idea of what it means to be a real man. We're going to get to that question. We had that question in another show. We never answered that. But I want to get to that question. But I want to continue to hear Giovanni, because, again, I think we skirt, and I've been known to say lead the witnesses, to try to lead the witnesses. But I think we need to sort of sometimes I don't know if we're specific enough in what it is that we're saying. The question is, who are we not sort of living up to? Whose expectations are we not living up? Society is made up of individuals. It's not a monolith. It's not brick and mortar. But society is made up of individuals. Where is this coming from as it relates to what we should be as men? It's not society, but who's sort of making these determinations? Who are we trying to please?
or you want us to put the finger wherein.
Listen, we'll never get to the root of the problem if we don't identify it and call it by its name, and then see how we can figure out how best to address it.
I don't see it as one place that we can place the blame on, because as I've been taught, the male is supposed to be the foundation of the relationship, and if the male is dysfunctional or the male is cracked, that relationship will not be a good relationship. So goes the male, so goes the relationship, so goes the male, so goes the family. The community is only made up of a group of either families or a group of spouses together that makes up that community. So if you have dysfunctional male who's supposed to be the foundation, then you're going to have dysfunctional relationships, and then you're gonna have dysfunctional families.
Okay.
And as a result, you're gonna have dysfunctional community. And therefore,
I'm gonna come back to this because I want us to look at certain errors, but I want to get back to that. But let me see if Giovanni, you have some more to add to this idea. Some of the challenges. I think you listed some, primarily one, this idea of no solid male figures in the home. I think that was one of the first ones.
Am I answering the question you asked just now, or the question listing the male challenges?
I think
the male challenges, the male challenges, because I want to be able to get to that question to to Jamaal and Tevin, unless we want to sort of get into the real crux of it.
Well, I think what you're asking, and you tell me if I'm correct, Mark, is we're being politically savvy right here.
Yeah.
We're being politically savvy in reference to our conversation. We know I know Brother Clarke had mentioned, in his dialogue, his answer. We're talking about, slavery. We're talking about the European influence of how we were displaced around the world. And if we need to be honest about it, it's I just had a conversation with my son, who's graduating this year on my 30th year anniversary of my graduation from Morehouse College. So I can, to thank the man upstairs for that. But at the same time, had a conversation with him in reference to the responsibility that everyone has to take in the downfall and the direct attack on the upbringing and the development and the suppression of Black males and the Black family in not just in the United States, around the world. I've had an opportunity to travel around the world with 22 plus countries, and it's the same place all over the place, no matter what it is. However, in the United States, I'll just say that on this Western Hemisphere, we have to really be honest. 1968, Martin Luther King was murdered. Okay, he was murdered. Now we're only 55 years from that process to wherein people were still trying to drink out of the same fountain. 55 years. All right. So in that process, there's a certain level of suppression that goes along with the manhood, with the suppression of Black maleness and the development of our families. We can't deny that those are actually a source of our challenges. And
Dumas, I hear all of those. I hear those things. I understand those things. We analyze those.
Right.
We analyze those to death.
And
because we understand those, in particular in the Black intellectual community, because we understand those, by now we should have we should recognize the root cause, and we should sort of, come up with solutions to those causes by now. We still shouldn't be living in an era where we're still saying, well, we're tied to the slave mentality.
Well, I tell you,
it isn't as easy as that.
It's not.
Okay. So let me get to Giovanni. Challenges, Archer challenges, Tevin challenges in raising Black boys, because I want us to get to the statistics. I want us to look at the statistics and the number of these young men, because it's a cycle, that we're not addressing. The number of young men that grow up in these environments where the statistics, more than 50% of children are born out of wedlock and are raised by a single parent, most likely a mother. Where in the 1970s, here in the Bahamas, according to some statistics, there were 29% unwed mothers in the 70s. By 2010, 2012, there were more than 62% of children being born to unwed mothers, where births, when you look at birth numbers, there are more than 5,000 here in the Bahamas. There are more than 5,000 live births, 6,000 live births, 5,000 live births. And of that, at least 60 something percent of those are to single parents, is to a single parent. These boys are growing up and being nurtured in these single mother environments. They go out into society dysfunctional as a result of that. They produce.
Well, Mark,
I disagree. Has nothing to do with because they grew up with single parents.
Okay.
Bear in mind, 65% of our population is under the age of 25. So it's automatic. If you have 65% of your population under the age of 25, you're going to have a majority of them being single. Now, those single parents aren't living in single homes. They are living in extended family homes where men are in the homes as uncle, as brothers, as grandfathers as well. So it isn't really the single parent per se in that regard. We have to look at other factors that contribute to that.
And they use those same statistics to further suppress
Yes.
the mentality of the community of young Black males and uplifting them. They use those same statistics. I'm going to say those same statistics are used to have us believe that we're not worthy or worthy to be understood. And the problem is those statistics are the reason why the challenges exist.
See, but I'm getting some sort of mixed messages, because in some ways I'm hearing that young boys are growing up in these with single mothers. They're being feminized and being sort of nurtured in a particular way. I'm hearing that part of the issue is that males, there are no solid male figures in the homes, and as a result of that, men are being nurtured in a particular way. So Jamaal, so what is it then? Why are we having, again, we're talking about, let's start, we're talking about from birth. That's from birth to full bloom. So we're looking at this from around the birth period, from around ages from birth to about 10 years old. What's taking place in the environment of these young men that we're talking about? Is this an exception? Is this the rule? But what's taking place in their environment in most instances that you all know about? Jamaal, your experience.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you to all the panelists. Thank you for the viewing audience. Mark, I concur with you. I believe the greatest challenge boys have as it relates to becoming men is the absentee father. I believe the absentee father is the greatest challenge. I believe that the father is the source and the provider. In social learning theory, Albert Bandura tells us that children learn vicariously. They learn from observation. How are our boys supposed to come to understand who they are if they don't have a father there? Yes, we do have instances where there's a male presence in the home, but I believe that there's nothing like the love and presence of a father. In Greek, we know the word father is pater, one who is committed. In fact, the father is one who works to reflect himself. So a father is one who pours into that child to create something as good or better. So in many instances, that boy will not get that from another male presence in the home. Yes, I agree. Uncles and grandfathers and older brothers, they have a place as it relates to rearing that boy, but there's a reason. There's a reason and there's a purpose for fatherhood. There's a purpose for motherhood, right? And I believe that that's the greatest struggle for men, for boys, as it relates to our Bahamian society. If you permit me, Mark, I would like to just read a few statistics that I came across, because I believe essentially most of us kind of saying the same thing. So let's contextualize this with some statistics. In his 2013 Fragile Masculinities, this is the title, Fragile Masculinities, the Loss of Young Men and the Pervasive Models of Masculinity in the Bahamas that Encourage Them to Fail. Ian Bethel argues that the Bahamas is experiencing a national problem where young Black males suffer from broken masculinity, and that this brokenness encourages them to fail. In 2013, in her dissertation on Black college males, Detra Bethel stated that Black males in the Bahamas account for more than 95% of Her Majesty's prison inmates. Bethel concludes that the state of Black males in education has impacted Black families and communities.
Hold a minute, Jamaal. I see brother Clarke he's shaking his head. You could kind of, brother Clarke, you could try to ask to interject.
Yeah, I love the statistics. Dr. Ian Bethel and I, we went to COB together. Good friend of mine. Mom was my speech therapist. Here's the thing. If you have a population predominantly Black, okay, 85 to 90% of our population, you would have a larger percentage of those in Bahamas Department of Correctional Services. I hear you talk about, I don't dismiss father. Father is very important. It is very important. If you don't have a father in your home, it's detrimental in poverty and violence and everything. But here's the thing. If Jamaal doesn't have a father, but Christopher takes on the father role, he's still providing that father, whether he's biological or not, he's still providing. It is called risk factors that the young man faces, and then it's called protective factors. What happens is that Christopher provides that protective factor so that Jamaal doesn't succumb to the risk factor of not having that biological father in the home. So God has instilled in all of us as males, if a child doesn't have a father, then other males should step up to be the father. And that's why I father a lot of young males. And that it might not be the biological father because I didn't have a father, but many in our church, Mark, where we grew up in, that Boys Brigade, Royal Ambassadors, the churchmen, they fathered me. Okay, yes, I didn't come up perfect, but they fathered me. And that was the resiliency factor. Never smoked marijuana, never drank alcohol as a teenager, grew up in a shotgun house, in the inner city, single parent. Okay, only problem I ended up with was my nickname was Too Sweet. Okay, yeah, that's the only problem I had. But the Lord had to deliver me from that. So, yes, I agree with the fathers being in the home. But if the father isn't in the home, then we have to have positive role model male in place to be that protective factor to mitigate against the risk that young man without his biological father being there.
I think it's something that you start off with. Yeah, no,
let me throw this out there. Just something to think about. And again, it talked about eras. Prior to say 1982 here in the Bahamas,
right?
We didn't seem to have the same sort of vexing issues. We always, we were community. It tended to be, headed by single mothers for a while, but we seem to be at certain state a more disciplined society. Yeah, so there was something that was taking place in our societies. Even like you said, we go back to the slave era, where black men were being lynched, and the family structure was there basically was no family structure. Black men were always on the run, so the women were primarily the ones responsible for being that village.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, when we look at what we were producing in those days, we tended to produce men, upstanding men. You know, we didn't seem to have the same numbers of dysfunction, or you know, among our black boys. So what has changed in the eras?
Media. Let's go back to the Bible. The prince of politics, the prince that rules the air. I'm a man of faith. In the 80s, we didn't have much television. We had black and white, we had antenna. And so the proliferation of the media coming in later 80s, 90s, and so forth. We had the culture coming into our homes through the media. Also, the Bahamas having over 2 to 3 million tourists a year coming in from North America. You have that cultural lag dropping off. You know, we have a saying, anytime the United States sneeze, we catch the cold. Instead of us catching good stuff that come out of the United States, we catch all the bad stuff. And you know,
but don't be fooled. Don't. And I'm gonna let you brothers know. And one of the things I just said, I traveled over 22 countries in the world. Okay. Every place that is, especially if it's a European country,
right?
Okay, the same thing applies.
Yeah.
And in the United States, the same thing applies. One of the things Brother Jamaal started off with, and I giggled, and as listening to him, the first thing he quoted is from the Greek word,
right,
expressing father. Then I'll ask you, why didn't we say a Swahili word? Well, Baba. And what I'm saying, that why I'm bringing that specific dynamic up is because the role in which we've been handed down to, the language and the understanding that we continue to bow on is those of our oppressors.
Yeah.
And you have to acknowledge, for a solution, you have to understand what the problem is. Just like we're taught in math and science, to indulge to fix disease, to indulge in engineering, you have to start off by finding out what the problem is, and then you assess the problem, and then you go ahead and come up with the solution, so you can come up with answers and better productivity.
You know, the Bible says, woe unto the people when the slave becomes the king. It happens to us. We who have been oppressed and we came into what we call authority, we end up becoming worse than the oppressor, those who oppress us. And that's because of the miseducation of the black man.
Absolutely. And that's a famous, everybody need to use that book and need to read it. Okay.
Yeah.
Need to
read it. I just want to expand on what Mr. Clarke said. You know, he mentioned media, right? And this is one of the things I was going to speak on a little bit earlier. So I just want to give you a second, Jamaal. I'll jump right back to you in a minute. What I think a bigger picture is we haven't addressed yet. And Mr. Humes is trying to find the answer here behind what the real issue is here. For me, one of the main issues I've noticed is that we have too many people with a platform giving too many different ideas. And you end up with too many different variations and lanes in which to go into. We see the same thing happen with religions. And now we have religions popping up all over the place. You have so many different choices to make. And as we all know, with many choices, people end up confused or they choose nothing. And that's what's happening right now. We have a society where options are abundant. You could choose any direction you want to go in. Even now, when we're so confused now, it comes down to even male and female. We have over 100 different choices of what you want to be, a male, a female, him, all kind of different things, right? And the issue, what I feel is a big prominent problem right now is that for men and boys in particular, there are so many examples in which to lean on to be the example you want, that you have hundreds and thousands of variations of men. And that's what happening today. There's no stead on structure. We see it with Christianity. Many streams of Christianity, many different denominations falling under Christianity. We see the same thing in other different religions. And this provides a big problem in society, because now when it comes down to a simple question as what is a real man? Between the 6 of us, we'll get 6 different answers. Although they may come to one streamlined answer, there's 6 different variations. And this is because we all grew up in a different environment. We all are exposed to different things. And so there's just one step further in our description that makes us different. And when we expand upon that one step further and expand upon it again, we see many different variations. The problem today is that no one is taking the stance to say, hey, this is going to be a streamlined definition of what this particular answer is, and let's move on. We're focusing and fighting on small, trivial things in society, and so we can't even solve the small things.
It's called an ethical dilemma. That's what it's called, an ethical dilemma.
Well, we're struggling with small things.
Jamaal, I don't know. I have some strong opinions. I'm trying to keep those out of the conversation, but Jamaal, let's hear from you, because I cut you off in the middle of your
sorry about that,
your statement. And, but let's continue to hear what you have to say on the topic.
Yeah, a lot was said that needs to be unpacked, but I'm going to continue because I think that persons who have done qualitative and quantitative research on these topics, I think we need to at least consider what they have found.
Based on their theories. Based on their theories, yes.
So we all have a theory, eh?
Right.
Listen, something I want us to do, because really what I would have liked to see a reaction show. A reaction to certain videos. Let me sorry, Jamaal, to cut you off again, because I watched this one show with Vivica Fox. She has a show panel of about 4 or 5 women. They look at situations between men and women. There was one show in particular with a young boy, troubled young guy. He's a young man, grew up in a single parent home. His mother started off by saying, he used to be such a good boy. He would come home, he would cook, he would clean, he would take care of his younger brothers and sisters. She didn't have to really worry about anything, but all of a sudden he's changed. He's no longer the same little boy, and she took care of all of his needs. And you had a panel of women sort of psychoanalyzing this young man, never looked at the role that the mother played in what he became. In one instance, there's another video with this young guy. He was outraged at his mother. He's a man now, and the topic of his discussion was that young Black mothers raise their sons to be their boyfriends or their husbands. So you have a lot of these dynamics at play here, and I wonder if in these discussions, in these theories, we're sort of skating around the issue, whether we want to or not, because I'm going to come to another question, that mothers play a huge part in what their young sons become. Mothers play a large role in determining whether or not a father can be present. Mother's a gatekeeper. In particular, if the man and the woman are not together, the mothers are the gatekeepers to whether or not the father can play an active role and be that kind of father to the child, And so we sometimes, again, for political correctness, we sort of tend to negate the role as mother of gatekeeper, the role as mother as the transmitter of culture to children, and what they eventually become as the nurturing partner of what children actually become when they go out into society. We tend to, not look at these issues, So are we because again, we're talking about the role of men in the lives of these young men, and particularly young men that are growing up in single parenthood. But how much how much are we at liberty in playing those roles? Or do we have much liberty in the roles we play in the lives of these young children, our young children, when the mother's the gatekeeper?
So, Mr. Humans, my qualms with that is, I agree with you entirely. I agree with you that mothers definitely have a heavy role of influence to play in whether young boys grow up in one direction or the other. However, I want to step even beyond that in my response and acknowledge the fact that yes, I could agree with that, and at the same time, I could hold men to even to a higher accountability factor, mainly because when it comes down to structure, laws, rules, regulations of society, men are the ones who decide what laws are going to be. Women only have the freedom to do what we allow them to do because
No,
we
man.
are at the end of it all when it
You
comes
better
down
don't
to
let them
laws.
feminists. You better don't let
No, no,
them
no,
feminists.
no, no.
Better,
Understand? Here, where I'm coming from. When it comes to fighting for rules and laws, man, we are the ones that fight wars. We fight wars, so we are the ones who decide whether a society is going to be continued in a certain direction or not. What happens today is that we have a society of men who have become complacent. We're complacent because we're not satisfied with what's happening today, but we're not doing anything about it either. Because there was a time when if men were unsatisfied with what was going on in society, we will rage a riot. We will fight to get the things that we deem fit of our society. But what's happening today is that I can agree with everyone and that women definitely hold a big part of what's happening today because a lot of women aren't teaching their boys right and not interested in their hand or getting influence from the man. But at the end of the day, if I have noticed this as a man, you have noticed this as a man, we have 2 or 3 generations of men that have incurred the same sort of abuse from women who are misusing their power that we have given them. We give women this power. They're misusing this power. But we're seeing generations of men pass and leave us here to suffer with the same things that they have left behind, and no one is changing anything besides complaining about it. The real issue is that we have laws that are in place by men before us that are not beneficial to us. These laws were created in a time when women didn't have the power and the rights that they have today. Our laws need to be upgraded. That's the first problem we're having now. Our laws do not correspond with the society we have today. We have laws based off, of speaking and particularly of marriage. Our laws are based on a time when women didn't have equal rights to vote, to go to work, to get educated. And since that time frame, women have equal rights in terms of voting, finding a job, and education. They have more rights than us in our society. But yet we complain about it, but no one's doing anything about it. Even when it comes down to having members of parliament and creating laws and rules, we have the last say when it comes to these things. But we have a generation of men who are influenced by things bigger than what the main issue is or what our predominant focus should be. They're influenced by being the most popular guy in environments. They're influenced by money, so that they're being influenced by, okay, what's the term I'm looking for? They're being bought. Their views are being bought because they're saying, okay, if I can make a personal gain from this, then I'm gonna sit back and not use my influence to do what I know to be the right thing. I'm being paid off. So we have a society of men who are selfishly choosing to sit back and let things remain the same because they're benefiting from it. The way things are going to change is that we have to decide, you know what? I'm going to be the sacrificial lamb. I am not going to be favored for these decisions I have to make, but I'm going to make them anyway because they have to be made for the greater good of all. That's what has to happen. As long as we all step into place and we have the power and we remain to do the same thing, there isn't going to be a change.
Give me some examples. Give me some examples. So what you're talking about?
I can give you a prime example. In our country right now, every 5 years we hold an election, and those elections we have a cast of new MPs or potential new MPs who are hungry and they have a desire to change, right? And I honestly believe before they are voted in, they really did have a burning desire to change the things that are around them that they did see that was a problem. But what happens is you get into power, you see the influence, you see what your hands could touch. you start to realize, wow, it's going to cost me so much effort and disgruntled from the behaviors and behavior from people in society to change the things that know to be the case. And no one wants to be the bad guy. Changing things, no one likes change. Change requires discomfort. So I would much rather keep things the same, right? And pacify issues that probably are going to require more than 5 years. Some issues we have in our society require more than a one-term party. So you have to come together as groups and say, hey,
Tevin,
we're going to make a collective Bahamian plan or plan for our generation.
I see you. I see you, Tevin. Oh, Tevin, go ahead, because I want to ask him. Because are you talking about issues in particular? Because I want us to focus. We're at the 10 o'clock hour.
Mm-hmm.
I want us to look at again. These challenges, overcoming the challenges, the things that we need to address.
I agree.
And ensuring that practical things that we need to address, and ensuring that our boys mature from boyhood to manhood, and are successful in that maturation.
Yeah,
I agree, but it still starts with that primary foundation. Because I can answer your question and simply say, okay, the way we change these things is more men have to become more involved in the family structure. That means uncles in cases where you might have a father that's dead, a father that's locked up, the brother needs to step up, who's the uncle, the grandfather needs to step up, man in society needs to step up. But how do we enforce things like that?
I would say differently, because what you're trying to address is an after the fact thing. I would say, how do we prevent it from happening so that we don't continue this cycle? I think that's what we're not looking at. How do we get to the place where you have these women that are having these children out of wedlock for men that don't hold any promise, for men that are, I guess you consider no good? How is this continuing to happen? Let me, Tevin, I see you. One thing I used to, when I was a professor.
Are we going to ignore the boys that exist today with that question? Because we could prevent, right? I agree. But what happens to everyone that's already here? The boys that already are in the mix. Are we going to forget them?
Can I just say?
Go ahead, Tevin. Go ahead.
And as I said a couple of episodes ago, the panel or this type of platform is to raise awareness, right? On these. Two things I would like to say from each of us on the panel. It can be a rhetorical question, or from those in the audience. There are people out there that is spending millions and millions and millions of dollars to decentralize our family, to decentralize our communities.
And you can't negate that.
Same as with the same social media platform, even the person you think is your friend, that person can be your worst enemy for your family or for your kids. You see what I'm saying? That's the first thing. The second thing, I think 3 things has to be present for you to even consider yourself in the position where you can actually lead and take responsibility. 1, a man has to know his purpose in life. For 1, you have to know your purpose as a man. 2, you have to be confident in yourself. That's the first thing. If you're not confident in yourself on a woman, I mean, nowadays, we have, as Giovanni would say, we have all these different definitions of what a man is or what a woman is. He, she, and the old lady. You can't really get tapped into your true self and harness that confidence to say, okay, then, you know what? I'm going to stand up with my head straight, my shoulders back, and I'm going to take charge. You see what I'm saying? And the next thing, you have to have your confidence. You have to have a certain level of identity to know that, hey, they're saying this over there, they're saying that over there, but in this house with my kids, I have the final say. I'm the one who is investing thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars to raise this child, and I should have the say in what my child learned. I see Mr. His name is Mr. Cassius. I think they have
Cassius, yes.
And he's really one of those whistleblowers for the Bahamas, and I really like what he's doing. He's bringing awareness. Hey, we need to get this ish out of our society. This is not. Until we stand up, I see
All right, we lost Tevin for a minute. I guess he
Sorry about that, guys.
connection issue.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I see. We have all of these people trying to portray their identities on us.
Mhm.
As men, I think what we need to do as men, gather all the men like how we're gathering right now. We need to have a campaign, right? Simple. It's simple, guys. Have a campaign of people who is willing to invest. You don't. It doesn't have to be financial investment. You can have an array of knowledge to help these guys. Hey, as a man in society, this is what you should be striving towards. And then you have some guys who are actually funding these campaigns. Okay, we're gonna go in Nassau this week. We're gonna go in El Salvador next month, and we're gonna get groups of guys. These politicians, I don't want to single out politicians because this is not a political issue, but every 4 years or 3 years or whatever, they have all this money to go on campaign for all these different things. But when it comes time for us to save our men in society, everybody is taken aback because they say they don't want to be the bad guy. Well, I want to be the bad guy. Okay, I want to be the bad guy. You may not be my son or you may not be my brother, but you have a responsibility as a man to lead, and we're going to hold you to that responsibility. So that's
okay. So what you're saying then is that as men, we need to see how as men we can get together, because we can get together as a collective in larger numbers to address these issues.
That's the only way. That is the only way. You can't burn the fire over there. You can't be having a match over here and I have a match over there, and then each of us are burning individual torches. We have to come together and we have to define we have to define in our society, not the world, right? Because different cultures, you have different backgrounds. In our society of the, let's say, Bahamas.
But when we do that, it's described, Giovanni, it's described as toxic masculinity.
Who cares?
Somebody. Well, you could say that. Listen, you can say that the feminist movement had its root in trying to, well, I guess it's a women's liberation, but it's liberation for a certain type of masculinity.
Well,
and it says that it's, when you look at this, even though when we look at what Betty Friedan did in 1963, when the feminine mystique, that book that this question of, was this all women were made to do, be in the home and serve men, and so when these was some of the foundational movements for women's liberation from the type of masculinity that society says this is what it means to be a man, this is the role of the man, this is the role of the woman, and so this is what the fight is. Here's a question I have, because I still want us to look at, because what we're trying to look at is this growing healthy boys to healthy men. Yeah, because we're at a stage we've made it through. I'm from a single parent home. I somehow made it through, but I look back and see that there are a lot of boys that are not fortunate, like me and Troy. I don't know how, most of you, whether you grew up in single parent homes, but you made it through. You became successful one way or the other. But what we're looking at are those men, those young boys that are somehow not making it successfully through, and they're taking that pipeline to prison. They're taking the pipeline to the grave very early. So how do we, what things do we put in place? One of the things, I want to put this question up there, because one of the things I've heard over and repeatedly, single mothers are saying, I don't have the tools to teach a boy how to be a man. Yeah, you hear that quite a bit. And I want to get an idea. What are some of the things that a father exclusively can teach a boy about being a man that, say, a single mother can't? when it comes to being a man, what can we teach boys about being men that single women can't?
Well, I'm gonna say this, and it's been kind of said in different ways. And the understanding of, first of all, knowing whom you are, your responsibility in that, how you should express that, and also your collective responsibility to your family, your community, and that also includes the world. Because when you move, me having two sons, and we're talking about different dynamics, okay? I'm a part of every single dynamic that we've discussed today. Okay, I'm a part of every single dynamic. Now, there was a time in my life when I was born, my father was in the household. I can recant and tell you every aspect of my father and where it stands at for me right now. Okay. However, when I became 12, between 8 and 12, my father was out of the household. Okay. And my mother at the particular time had to take the reign of that. However, I had uncles and other men that were around me.
Exactly.
All right.
I think that's what Troy is saying too.
Precisely the point. So coming from one stage to the next, okay, the narrative now that the only way this is going to take place is based on having these fathers in the household.
Well, yes, but what is it that what are some of the things that we teach boys that mothers cannot?
We cannot. First of all, they can't. A woman can, just like a man cannot can't innately teach men by their vision to be men. Okay,
That's a question. I think
I think you don't think it's a good question?
I think it's a loaded question, because you're gonna say, what are some things that fathers can teach boys that a single mother can't? Well, you can look at the flip side of it, and you have single fathers over here who are raising daughters.
Well, the reason why I asked the question, I guess at the end of the day, what is this product that you're putting out there? What is this person supposed to be if he's going to be a successful man? I think about the fact that, women, and Jamaal, you can speak to this if you want to, but you're raising, for me, when I was bringing up my son, my grandson, my thinking was that you're raising this young man to go and be someone's good husband, to be responsible, to be respectful, to be productive, and to be able and to know what it means to be a good father, to be a good husband, to be confident, like you say, to recognize and respect others. I think I said that. But these are the things, certain principles that you're teaching this young boy that would make him successful in society as a grown man. And I'm wondering, Dumas, I saw your eyebrow, Jamaal. I don't know if you see something different, but I think women would know what as a woman, you would know what it is that you would like a man to be to you. The type of man you would like to have as a husband, respectful man, someone who values your opinion, etc., etc. Can a woman not teach these principles to her growing son? Because at the end of the day, she's supposed to be growing him to set him free to the world.
Is this for me?
So are there things that, Jamaal, only we can teach our boys to be good citizens and respectable men, or can women also do the same thing?
let me answer it this way, Mark. One day I went to the mall with my son, and I was walking in front of him. I had my hands in my pocket. I only looked back to make sure that he was with me. When I looked back, he was also walking with his hands in his pockets, exactly the way I was walking. There was another time when we had a conversation, and I realized that he was responding to a question the way I had responded to the same question a day before. I realized that he was somehow a reflection of me. He wanted to be like me. He didn't want to be like his mother in that regard. There was some things about me he obviously felt he could only get from me.
Okay.
There are things that he can get from his mother as well, but there was things about his attributes, his character, his persona, the way he walks. He wanted to be like his father in that regard. I think boys need that. That's how they come to discover their identity, right? There are certain things about us that are innate, that are very unique and very individual. However, in terms of shaping that male and putting them on the path, it's important, and we have to make the distinction. I think because we talk about male, but then sometimes we say man, and then sometimes we say father.
Father.
So a man could be an uncle, a brother, a grandfather, or father. So when we're saying father, let's say father. And I point that out for this reason. I have met a lot of men who had the support of their uncles, their grandfathers, and other males they respect in society, and they still talk about the anger, frustration, post-traumatic stress, all sorts of things, and negative energy that is directed towards their absent father, who they still hear about, who they may even know about, and still trying to wonder why this man was not present, even though they had surrogates, even though they had persons there who gave them the support that they need. So I still believe that there is a place. I believe everything that God has made, as God as creator, made everything with a purpose. Everything has a purpose. Uncles have a purpose, brothers have a purpose, grandfathers have a purpose, and fathers have a purpose.
And
Oh yeah.
I would also like to interject on that. And one of the things that I would say, especially about this point, is I would like to bring the analogy. When you're going for a job, right? You go for a job, you see all the responsibilities that you need to do for this job. But in order for you to execute this job properly, you're gonna have to go through some hands-on training. Whether it be, you're going through college, or you actually go on the job for like a week or two and shadow somebody to get in that feel of what these jobs feel like. I think that's the same thing with the male presence in the household. So a woman can tell you what she needs from a man, but at the same time, you as a boy, as Mr. Jamaal would say, until you see these duties being executed and how they should be executed and in what order these duties, then you could truly understand what it is to come into your fruition as a man. One of the things that I would say would be one of the prime examples I would give: emotional intelligence. We all know that as men, we're not going to sit here and argue with a woman. I mean, I wouldn't. I definitely wouldn't.
You're not gonna sit. You're not gonna sit. You're not gonna sit here and do what?
Argue with a woman. You're not, that's a no-no. We're not going to sit and argue with a woman.
Why not? Why not?
No, when I say argue, I mean like you have to have a stance, right? If we come to if we're trying to have a discussion, and I'm saying, okay, I think this is the right way to go, and you're telling me, you're giving me all this attitude, and you're trying to be slick with the mouth and stuff like that. In my mind, I'm focusing on the issue at hand. I'm not going to say a lot of time, but it can be said that women are emotional creatures. They act.
I think we need to be very careful.
Yes.
Yeah, no. What I'm saying is,
Mhm.
it's widely known that they say it's said that women are emotional creatures.
Some women.
What data you
Some
what data
women.
you exposing?
Some women.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is, as a man, you have to
Yeah.
come from a logic behind it, right? Some women can get used in society for making certain decisions. But as a man, when you make certain decisions, you have to make sure that you're moving in the right path and you're moving in concrete facts and logic, right? Because whether we like to agree with it or not, the playing field is not level, right? Women and men is not equal. So let's not try to sit here.
Well, I'm gonna kind of go where Brother Jamaal
Yeah.
was speaking. Yeah, what Brother Jamaal was saying, and in his process, how is he processing father and other men?
Right.
It's you cannot that I don't think that's no one's going to disagree with you, Jamaal.
Right.
I don't disagree with you in that by no means.
No.
Okay, I think you it's right on point. At the same time, acknowledging the issues that we have, and why in particular when it comes down to fathers not being in place so that we can be the position of what it is to help and assist our young males to be men and productive in society. We still have to deal with the factors that are cofactors and why that does not that it becomes it's a challenge for us right now. It's a challenge in our society. Okay,
And
we can't negate those things. And I'm just going to say, being in an institution that we did was 2,300 men, young males. Okay, at minimum 500, on an average 500 graduate every single year. The largest population of young males graduating from an institution in the United States at a higher level education in the United States. You have institutions who have 20, 30, 40, 50,000 students, and they still will not graduate 500 Black men. Okay? And I can tell you, coming from all those dynamics in which we're talking about today, and I think Giovanni mentioned one aspect of that. What about those who've gone through from the stages that appear to be problematic to when we receive them when they're 17, 18, 19 years old, and they're coming to us with these issues and challenges. Okay.
So in my field, and I want to concur with you, Christopher, what Jamaal was saying, because in my field, yes, that's where what Giovanni was talking about. We're talking about the intervention then. So you have prevention, what Mark being talking about, and then you have intervention so that we can mitigate those from falling through the cracks. But if they still fall through the cracks, then we talk about rehabilitation. And I know Jamaal started off with some data, and there are data of absent father, which is very important. You know, children with fathers absent in homes are 5 times more likely to be poor. And you have infant mortality rates are 1.8 times higher for infants of unmarried women or unmarried mothers than for married mothers. And you have youths with father absent from the household still had a significantly higher odds of incarceration than those in mother-father families. And you have youths who are more at risk of first substance use without highly involved fathers. So Jamaal, your statement is very, very pertinent to this conversation because, you know, being raised by a single mother raises the risk of teen pregnancy. Also, fatherless children are twice as likely to drop out of school compared to living with both parents. Living in a single parent home doubles the risk that a child will suffer physical, emotional, or educational neglect. And finally, an absent father can have an effect on a person's economic prospect beyond childhood. So you read on the money, Jamal. Okay.
Hey, Mr. Humes, correct me if I'm wrong. The question you asked in particular was, what's the difference between a boy being raised by a father and a boy being raised by a woman, right? I want to jump right back into the question that you asked and list in particular what you were asking. I'd start by saying stoicism. And in stoicism, you teach how to respond to difficult situations as a man, as a representation of what a man is supposed to be. So I believe stoicism gives you an ideal image of how men are to deal with their emotions. It's not that men do not have emotions, but it's how you are to conduct yourself when dealing with certain emotions. So I'd start with stoicism. I also start with, I also add into that leadership. A father teaches a boy leadership qualities, how to take responsibility, right? A father also teaches a boy the ways in which he is to groom himself, right? These are examples of things only a man in particular could teach a boy, because there are distinctions, and I think it's important to the point of distinctions. We don't want to flurry the waters and make it seem as if it's almost ambidextrous and you can be either one. All right. So these are things in particular only a man alone can teach a boy, right? A father can also teach a man or teach a boy how to use his hands and to be crafty, right? Things around the house in particular, all right? There are things that only man can do for obvious reasons, where there be strength associated, right? So a father would be able to teach a boy how to do these things in particular. A father also teach a boy how to take responsibility for decisions or things that he's done in his life and how to be accountable of these things. A father also teaches a boy how society will treat him and how to respond to the things that happen in society and the proper way to take channels and depending on what the situation is, right? A father also gives a boy his first initiation phase with reality, right? So things that may happen or he may be privy to in the environment that is unfortunate, but he has to understand these are the things that are reality and this is how you deal with it, right?
And
Those
what
are just a few things. And
you
those are
know,
just a few things I want to mention that man in particular, fathers, right? As Jamal mentioned, fathers will have to teach their sons, right? And these are the things that separate the boundary and kind of start the speed up. Will start the conversation into why we have boys
Mhm.
that appear to have weak points in their manhood. It's because although they were raised on the principles of probably an education, how to be a nice human being, they do have loopholes because they then go on to have kids and boys themselves, and these boys now start a second generation of broken proper fatherhood of mannered qualities, and that's what we're having now, second and third wave of
So
broken mannered qualities.
so I'd like to look at it from where we are now.
Mhm.
Um, you know, we're past the prevention stage, I think, because I think looking at the stages that Troy mentioned, in the intervention stage, a lot of these characteristics that you spoke about, um, dealing with emotion, these are what fathers are supposed to teach: dealing with emotion, leadership, grooming himself, how to use his hands and be crafty. Do you think that the men that are our fathers today, in most of the areas that where we encounter delinquency, you think the men in these environments are um, what's the word I'm looking for? That they're whole enough that they can, given the opportunity to participate in their kids' lives, that they can actually teach their male sons how to deal with emotions,
see,
about leadership.
Mhm.
So I see you smiling
yeah,
about
because I
grooming.
wanted to
What
add
I
to Giovanni. I wanted to make amendment with Giovanni was
Mhm.
talking about father. I wanted to add good father, because
Okay, so
father
Okay,
father is not a title. Father is a position, and that's what we have to understand.
agree.
It's a position. It's not a
it's a
title.
lifestyle.
Right. So all of those things are true, and I learned all of those things from my mentor, the late Dr. Miles Monroe, and but fatherhood and so forth, and being a good father, okay, because as a instructor with, because I do parenting program with social services for the National Parenting Program, and that's my main topic that I speak about every time to unwed, what we call unwed mothers, teenage mothers in the PACE program here in the Bahamas. And we talk about how to be good fathers, and you listed off all this stuff, whereas you love your children, responsible, you teach and instruct, you discipline, you encourage, you comfort, you warn your children. You forgot that you left out that part. A good father does not provoke his children, and that's from the Bible as well. Okay, so there are some good points how to be a good father, and then we have to teach our boys. You ask the question, how do you intervene? Now we have to peel back the layers, the onion layer, and then reprogram our boys how to become a real man and understanding what it is. So what is a real man? Well, a real man desires and loves God and his presence. A real man seeks and restore God's image in himself. A real man aspires to work and develop his gifts and talent. A real man honors his marriage and family above personal interests. A real man endeavors to learn and live, teach God's word and principles. A real man demonstrates faith and inspires it in others. And that's some of the things. And I like how Wilson talked about EQ. That's very important. We only, as men, we always want to focus on IQ and forget all about EQ, because EQ, as emotional intelligence, is the ability to identify, assess, and control the emotions of oneself, of others, and one group. And it counts for more in a relationship. Emotional intelligence counts for more than IQ, expertise for determining, even in a job, in a relationship, in the community. So all of those things plays a part. So it isn't just one component, it's a whole array. And I like the suggestion of Wilson. We need to have more forums like this, Mark, that men can come here and deal with the ethical dilemmas that what's your name?
Dumas?
Culmer.
Christopher.
Yeah,
Oh,
no,
Giovanni.
Culmer brought up, because we face a lot of dilemmas, ethical dilemmas. And I always used to say, and I remember from my former pastor, not Dr. Miles Monroe, Reverend Charles Sanders, Dr. Sanders, when saying, if it wasn't for Jesus Christ, women, what it is to be equal to men, because it was Jesus who actually brought the idea of women doing and being made available vessels and stuff like that. And I think over the years where we've been as men, and you wanted to point a finger, let's point the fingers at us men. Over the years, we have been fighting with the women to bring equal rights to them and so much power and empower women, and forgot about us as men. And as a result, we are now being left behind trying to catch up. And so we have a lot of work to do, brothers. Okay. And it starts with us looking inside the mirror at ourselves.
Mark, can I add?
Go ahead, Jamaal.
Since Troy mentioned Real Men Ministries, I'm also a real man, and so I want to point out that as part of leadership, we need to learn how to serve. When the question was asked, who will be the greatest in the kingdom?
Mm-hmm.
It was the one who knows how to serve.
Mm-hmm.
I think our men, fathers,
right.
We need to serve our boys.
Yes.
Not just show them how to lead, but we also need to show them how to serve and show them the relationship between leading and serving, and to also show them that it's something that you can do simultaneously. While you lead, you're also serving.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that I try to do with my son, to teach him, and to teach him from experience. I told my son why he should sit in the front of the class. I said, when you go to class, this is what you should do, sit in the front. And I told him why. I told him about an experience I had in college, and how I was only able to do better when I started to sit in front of the class. So he came home one day and his mom asked him, "How was his day?" He said his day was fine. And she asked him, "Where did you sit?" He said, he said, "I sit in front." So he told her, you didn't have to tell me where to sit. I already had that conversation with my father. I knew where to sit and I knew why to sit there. We had that conversation. My son is 5 years old. What we also need to do as men is we need to make sure our boys know that we are not perfect. We need to have conversations with them about the mistakes we have made and are still making. This helps them because our boys are struggling with trying to be the ideal when their mentors are not. Okay? We look good in the suits and the glasses and all of that and the neckties, but we also have struggles that our boys can't see and do not believe exist.
Do
And
you,
if we could let them know that you can make it dealing with the challenges you have, and this is how you can do it because I have challenges and this is how I'm dealing with it, then they will know it's possible. They
let me
can't
ask,
know it's possible if they don't hear it.
do you think we're doing Dumas? You in a, again, you're in an institution, 3,000 black men, you get an opportunity to, to preach the message to these guys, or most of them are there because they've made it through, they made it out in many ways. Troy, you spend a considerable amount of time. I see the tremendous work you do in the community with our young men in the prisons. You go into the prisons dealing with our young men. um, do you think that all of us who, I've been an educator for almost 30 years, more than 25 years, dealing with young men, young women, and the likes. There are thousands of educators out there. There are thousands of NGOs that are out there. There are thousands of other persons that have programs that are working in these communities. Do you think that we're those of us who know better and are working hard to do better, do you think we're making an impact in these communities? Are the numbers bearing out the work that we do?
Absolutely.
Are they?
I do think so. Yes, I do think
Absolutely.
so. Because
Can-
Absolutely.
take Christopher out, take Wilson out, take all of it in your own sphere of influence. And let's say you decide you're not even gonna act or do for a week or a day. The impact, the riveting impact that it will have on your sphere of influence will be really astronomical. So I
let's
do.
let's 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 base it on, let me hear some numbers. Do you find that the numbers of delinquent men are dropping year by year? Are you finding that the numbers are dropping, or do you find that the numbers are increasing? Because
Can I give you I hear a lot of statistical data and numbers we used. Okay, I'm going to give you a reality.
please give me something to say that all of the work that we're doing is having an impact on these communities.
Well, I'm gonna give it to you from this perspective, and I hope it answers your question along with what I'm saying. Where I lived at in New York City. Okay, I'm going to start there. New York City. It's a place called Left Rack City. It had 4 buildings, it was 5 sections, 18-story buildings in each section. It was a square blocks. Okay. It has to be about 30,000 people live in those buildings. Okay, or more. 57th Avenue is where all the crime took place.
Okay.
Okay. 99th Street, Junction Boulevard, and Horace Harding Expressway. Okay. You may have had, now remember the number, had to be about 30,000 people live in that area. The number of delinquents, okay, I'm just going to use that word, and challenges, probably give me a number, probably about 1,000. that did it on 57th Avenue. Now, 30 out of 30,000 people, 1,000 were the delinquents. 29,000 of them people probably went to work, school, looked after their children every single day.
What year? What decade are we talking about? What era are we talking about?
I'm gonna bring it up, but we're talking about the 80s.
Well, you notice I said when I was looking, I said
no, but I'm gonna bring it up. I'm gonna bring it up to you now,
okay.
And I'll use this right just to show you what the conversation we've been having and how it fits. First of all, most of us are not lost.
That's
right.
Let's bring
Right.
that.
I was gonna get to that question.
Yeah.
Okay, so no, that's why I'm giving you these numbers.
Right.
Okay. All right. So just know this, that even with those numbers I just gave you, think about how many people you walk by a day or drive by in a day. Okay. And throughout the whole entire week, you drive by them. In 1 week, you may see one instance that might be considered negative in any form or fashion, dealing with Black men or so on, right? In your mind, because how we're conditioned, that you already done passed thousands, hundreds of people all day, every day for a week. And that one instance that you pass by, now all of a sudden, that one Black male or 3 Black males that you've seen do something negative, what is the thing that come out your mouth? Black men don't have no discipline.
Yeah.
Look at them. Look at us.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm saying, let us be careful. Okay. On over intellectualizing the negativity that's being presented to us every day by our societal mechanisms, media, TV shows, music. Okay.
Yep.
So
all those things, entertainment.
Great. I'm glad you because again, as I start off the show, I'm saying if we are consumers of popular media, you would believe that this is the condition. That this is the rule and it's not the exception.
It's actually the exception.
Right. So the question, question is this the exception? Because that's what you would think. And is the greatest challenge that we face to raising boys to men in this era is the greatest challenge popular media, more so than anything else. Is it popular media that keeps us stuck on this idea that we're doing poorly as people of color?
Yeah, I mean, if I could just interject real quick, I would say the media portray us in a way, and that's why I'm saying that there are organizations out there that are spending millions of dollars destabilizing, right?
But see, here's the thing, Tevin. We actively, as people of color, participate in those things.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, while the minority and every race or culture have those delinquent, but I would say for us, I just think that because there's so much information, out there, we are, especially as men, Black men, we are lost, and that's what I think it is. I think that young men nowadays, they're lost. They have so much of distraction out there that they don't understand the purpose. And I see the question is, what does it mean to be a real man? And I would say, I would go back to those 3 basic things. A real man, you have to, and I would appreciate, if, let's say, everybody on this panel for the rest of the year to get at least 5 males, 5 boys, and just put them under your wing and just teach them, and be like a therapist to them. I know that we all have different schedules and different workloads or whatever, but if we could just dedicate ourselves to 5 boys and try to help and mold them into these 3 things. 1, you have to identify who you are as a person. You have to identify by your purpose. You get what I'm saying? Your purpose is very important. That is what's gonna guide your energy. That's what's gonna guide your mind, and that's what's gonna guide your emotion. You have to be confident enough to live out that purpose and know that, okay, you're in a field where there's so much distraction. You have to be confident in yourself to know, hey, this is the vision and this is what I'm working towards. And nothing else, no matter what they say about me, no matter what they do, no matter the type of names they call me, I'm confident in myself to know that I am not that. Right? And the third thing is the responsibility. It's a privilege, gentlemen, to have that responsibility to usher in that new generation of men that's going to take our place. It's supposed to be a privilege to be responsible. And I see a lot of men, they're shying away from that responsibility because nobody want to be that bad person. Nobody want their name to be associated with this group. You see what I'm saying? And so everybody's shying away from that responsibility. But it's a responsibility. To be a man, to be manly is to be responsible.
Any single fathers on the panel other than other single fathers on the panel?
Tevin, what Tevin did, right? Tevin wasn't here when I shared about the real man. He's saying the same thing that I would have said prior to coming in about identity, heritage, potential, purpose, and destiny. Once they knowing those things, and becoming, a real man and then doing a spot. So the whole key is for each and every one of us to first position ourselves in becoming that man we're supposed to be. And then mentoring, like you stated, another child. And like Christopher stated, the media showcase all the badness the minority make. And when I say minority, not necessarily the minority in color, but the minority in behavior in society. And I guess in some instances, because those behavior cost society financially, so they have a tendency to prey upon or expose that or blow that up much more than it actually is. But we have to, as men, we have to position ourselves so that we can mentor the next generation. So, and teach them about our mistakes. Like I think Jamaal who talked about it. And so that they wouldn't walk the path. Because for me, the reason why I got into the work that I'm into for 14 years was because all the mistakes that I made, the failed relationships, the failed marriages, and so forth, that gave me the impetus that when I fail at, I could not see another brother failing at those same mistakes. Because my pastor always taught me, and he mentioned me, instead of me making the same mistakes and living life through experience through mistakes, I could read or learn from other people's mistakes so that I wouldn't make those same mistakes. And that's what I'm trying to do as I mentor these young boys, as I provide treatment and therapy for young men and not so young men. And we have to, just take our sphere of influence and do the same so that once we can change one person at a time, we would have made a contribution to humanity.
What's your success rate, Troy? When you look at the young men that you deal with, when you see them now, you've been in this for 14 years, so you have an opportunity now to see a multitude of young men that would have come through your program and what they've become. How much of them are now coming back to also, sort of give to the cause?
Well,
you should have an army by now.
Our data that we not necessarily given to us specifically, our data shows that let's take one aspect of our work, the prison recidivism. 8 out of 10 individuals who come to our program do not return back into the criminal justice system. 8 of them. As it relates to the adolescent programs in the high school system, we have tracked that because for our grants that we had from the Templeton Foundation, the Life Equity Foundation, and the U.S. Embassy and the State Department, we had to track our individuals who came from the junior to the high school, who came to our program, and we have about 85% of those who have successfully passed through our program did not enter the criminal justice system or become repeat offenders in the educational system. We would have removed them out from the school room, out of the pipeline from the schoolroom to the jailhouse. And so that's what we build our success on. That's what we build our brand on.
How many of them are coming back to sort of help the cause? Because like I said, I'm thinking with those numbers, you save them, they should be coming back to sort of, pass it down. You should, that's why I said you should have an army of guys now that are in the communities with
us,
you.
But they're not with us, but they actually all over the place. Like Kingston Point, I can call on at least 10 to 20 of them who are behavioral therapists in detention facilities throughout the U.S. One just graduated December last year. He came through as an at-risk boy, got kicked out of school, came into our alternative school program, and he's now a technician, behavioral health technician, graduated from the Philman Cookman College through a band scholarship. We had one who was going to Olympics who was murdered 2 weeks ago. He was going to Olympics as a boxer. And, it really hurt my heart that he was murdered with his brother in a shopping parking lot because he was out with his brother. But we have a lot of success stories that you can go to our website that you can actually see on our Facebook page, leadinstitute.org, and you can see the comments and you can see the success rate that we would have had and stuff like that. But from the school program, as we track, there's a small percentage that came back to actually directly work or did their internship with the Institute. But a lot of them are working as police officers, defense force officers. They are teachers who came through the program like 50 years ago. The young men that we dealt with in 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 are totally different from the young men that we have to deal with today. They are a different breed altogether. So we have to.
All right, well, gentlemen, listen, man. I know one of the things you guys talked about is men getting together in these spaces to talk about issues like this. And the issue is it's just never enough time, to really dive into it. We've already spent 2 hours tonight discussing this issue. And, we could continue on, but I'd like to, let me just, so we sort of wrap up because, one of the things is I wanted tonight to sort of be a focus on what it is that we can do. I know there's almost no way that we can have a discussion on raising young boys successfully to men without bringing in our female counterparts. But I was hoping that we wouldn't spend a lot of time focused on that, but more time focused on what it is that we as men, could do or we're not doing well enough. How do we find solutions to get back into the lives of our children again? Again, this is a first discussion. I would like, and I thank you all for taking the time out of your schedules. Jamaal, we didn't get to you much tonight.
It's okay.
That's when we have, because I thought this was going to be an hour discussion, but everybody didn't get a chance to really contribute the way that we typically do. But it was good information, and I thank you for your input and your expertise. I would like, again, to see how, we can have further discussion on this, but I'd like to do some reaction type shows as well, where you can, to show, where you have a real life situation and to analyze these situations and, bring some light from your experience of what's taken place in these situations. So I'd like to invite you guys back on another show to look at it, to do some reactions to some videos and the likes with me and discuss from your point of view what's taken place, help analyze some of these videos. So again, in closing, any final words? Again, the idea is, the challenges of raising boys to men. What do we do as men that we can position ourselves as fathers? Most of us are in those positions, and we've either done our jobs to raise our kids already. um, we're working with young men. Many of us are working with young men to ensure that they get on those roads. But what about, what is it that we can do for those guys that are not in the position that we're in, that don't have the necessary means to get in their kids' lives? How do we get them back? How do we get our men back into the lives of their children so that they can play an active role in ensuring that they become productive citizens, in particular their boy children? Any final thoughts on that? How do we get, on that?
Well, I would like to close with this. All men fall, but the great ones get back up. You do not drown by falling into the water. You drown by staying there. You do not decide your future. You decide your habits, and your habits decide your future. So, how do you get back? Just remember that mantra. All men fall, but the great ones get back up. You do not decide your future. You decide your habits, and your habits decide your future.
Excellent. Your mic is out, Tevin.
You hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say for me, my closing statement would be that each one teach one. You know what I mean? Especially if you have the information and you have the luxury to get all these resources. Don't be afraid to go to your brother and share your resources and share your knowledge. And probably that one conversation that you will have while you sharing that resource with that person could help them unlock their potential. Because sometimes it just might be that they're lost or they're confused, with societal problems or with problems that they faced when they were kids, child trauma and stuff like that. And so they're lost and they didn't get the opportunity to really harness themselves and harness their purpose. And you having that opportunity to do that, sit down, have a conversation with somebody, see where they're at, and help them to lead them into the right path. So I would just say each one teach one, and just keep pushing that forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Tevin.
So as it relates to in cases where there's a broken relationship between like fathers and sons, I think fathers should take the initiative. I think every major decision in life should begin with prayer. We should petition God for guidance. But I think men should be transparent, be honest. If you fell short, if you made some mistakes, go to your son and said, listen, I made a mistake. It happened when I was very young. At the time, I was selfish. Whatever the situation was at that time, be honest. And I think that honesty is the start to mending a broken relationship. With the help of God, I know there are many boys. I have spoken with them, and as much hate and anger they have expressed towards their father, they also seem to be yearning to mend, to bond. And I know that that is true. So I believe it starts with prayer. After that, I think the father should be very open and transparent about what happened. And I believe that is the beginning to mending a broken father-son relationship.
Dumas, Giovanni.
I'll end by saying we need to change what we deem as popular as men and lead by example by doing so. So, a prime example of this is just simply put, we have a culture that promotes and popularizes negativity and negative aspects and negative traits of masculinity in men. We need to change the diaphragm of what is popular for men and young boys so that men and young boys can now see positive aspects and traits and see these are the examples they want to emulate rather than the things we allow others to portray. Too many good men sit back and allow negative examples of what young men should see to be the only thing they emulate, the only thing they're able to see visibly or popularize. So good men need to come from the shadows. Don't be meek. We need to speak up and let young men see that we too have a voice and we also interested in saying, hey, this is our take on what it is to be. And closing, I'll say to lead by example by doing these things. Simply leading by example. It's one thing to say, and it's one thing to condemn. But like Jamaal said, leading by example means, hey, you state where you went wrong, and you stating where you went wrong, you create an environment that makes people comfortable enough to come to you with advice because they see you in a more humanistic standpoint rather than this unattainable specimen or unattainable role or role model.
Giovanni, you leave us with a high charge, man, because you telling us we got to go fight the media now, man.
Not necessarily fight the media.
we have to find a more popular media that would.
What I believe,
that's a call.
What I believe is one of my mantras is I believe in standing out, even if it means being alone.
Really?
I stand firm in standing out, even if it means standing alone, because it's important that the truth is told. And for me, the truth is the one and only principle I stand behind. So even if it's unpopular, even if no one else wants to acknowledge it, I will stand alone in the truth because the truth must be told. And someone has to be the one to be that bad person or the one that changes or the disruptor. And I stand by being a disruptor.
Right. And you see me looking away because there's some comments that are coming into one of the sites that's not coming into the chat. So I can't load it up, and they're just now starting to come in. One person was saying that they were curious regarding Troy's last statement about a different breed. I don't know. I don't remember the statement you made, but it's starting to come in as we close. But we'll pick those up. It's unfortunate that the comments are now starting to come in as we close. Hopefully, we'll be able to pick them up. So, Brother Dumas.
I'll try to make mine very short.
Yeah, close it out. You look like you.
Man, my mantra of life is a mind without limitations, and the fact that that's one of my mantras is because Brother Giovanni, Brother Jamaal, Brother Tevin, Brother Troy, Brother Mark, we all have positions of power, and we all have positions to uplift what it is that we need to do in our positions as men. And they're all coming from different positions. So we cannot limit ourselves to our own disposition. We have to have the understanding and the respect and the know-withal and the responsibility to keep our minds open because we all really truly still trying to do the same thing. Yeah. And that's to uplift our communities, to make sure our men, our young men, following a solid foundation, and also by following the power of the Creator, and and that power's understanding. And one of the things I always tell my student athletes, I always tell them, I say, I'm not trying to be better than God, but I'm trying to be like God because He said He made us in His image. Yeah. That image on this plane means that I have the power to create, and just as well as I have the power to destroy.
Yeah.
So which one would I choose?
Yeah.
Don't limit your mind of thought. Respect, direction, and let's move forward and do what we need to do.
Thank you very much, Dumas. And I'm glad you closed out on that because, again, the platform initially was created to look at these issues impacting men of color, in particular Black men, and to see how we can find those solutions. Like I've said in every other show, we understand what the problems are, but we need, and I'd like to see how we can spend more time trying to find solutions, coming together, finding a way to bridge the gap in these relationship issues and whatever issues that impact our community so we can escape what popular media does. So I want to thank you guys for joining us tonight. I want to thank you in the audience for spending some time with us tonight. And, we hope that you'll be back with us as we, bring more shows to you, in particular looking at these issues that impact us as a community of color, and in particular as it impacts us as Black men and Black women. So again, thank you very much. Thank you guys very much. And I'll see you around for another show.
Absolutely.
Have a good night.
Thank you, gentlemen. Have a great night.
Take care. Nice meeting all of you.
Right.
Good night.
Likewise.
Good night.
Have a good night.